Democratic candidates have only 2 months to go before the first national debate, which is scheduled for June. Washington Governor Jay Inslee is hoping to make that stage. He is running a presidential campaign centered on fighting climate change.
As governor, he launched a clean energy fund to invest in new technologies, and he also issued a clean air rule to cap carbon emissions in the state and expanded public transit in the Seattle area. Governor Inslee joins us now. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
So since we started off with all the things that you've done in regards to climate change and the environment, let's start there with this Green New Deal. What's your take on it? You know, critics have said it's somewhat ambitious and perhaps a little bit unrealistic, but are you behind it?
Look, I think this has really helped us move the ball forward, and for three reasons. Number one, it's got people talking about climate change, and that issue has been ignored. It's an existential threat to the United States, but it's been ignored in the debate. Had about 4 minutes in the last 3 presidential debates. Second, it has raised the ambition level as to what we actually have to do, and it is a huge restructuring of our economy, and there are enormous economic benefits from making those investments to do that.
Well,
but it's raised ambitions. And third, I think this is important too, it has brought new people into the debate, marginalized communities, frontline communities, communities of color and poverty, because we know those are the folks who are always the first victims of climate change. So for 3 reasons, I think it's advanced the discussion. Now, we're going to have a whole suite of policies behind that, many of which that we're doing in my state. You mentioned some of our successes, and we're doing more. We have a bill for 100% clean electrical grid. We know that we are going to put millions of people to work in the future. We already have 3 million people in this country working in clean energy. We know we have to have a just transition to help marginalized communities, so we decrease income inequality at the same time we're fighting climate change. And we know we need to do this, which is to stop these $27 billion of giveaways to the fossil fuel company from these giant subsidies and these tax breaks. So there's 4 things that are very quickly the things we need to do, and I think that this has helped advance all of those things.
I think it's interesting that you have climate change and inequality sort of in the same conversation.
Yes, they need to be. For several reasons. Number one, as I've said, the first victims of climate change are frequently the people who are living next to freeways, breathing diesel smoke, having their children get asthma. There are people who live, tribal communities today are getting flooded because of sea level rise. Literally, I co-authored a book about this in 2007, a little town called Shishmaref, Alaska, where tribal communities are literally, their houses are falling into the ocean because of the sea level and the melting of the north. And secondly, this is very important from a political standpoint because we need everybody to be on board here. This is a mission. It has to be a national mission, and everyone can be a hero here and everyone can participate. So the fact that we're getting more Americans involved in this is really a healthy thing, and I look forward to success.
You know, it's an important point, and it's very often not a focus of the discussion around climate change, but there are real issues with climate change refugees, people who are being displaced, and that number is going to increase according to scientists. But you're facing President Trump, who's slammed the Green New Deal in his rallies. He's got a very large megaphone. He's one of the most powerful people on earth, and when he slams climate change or when he confuses the weather, when he typically tweets, you know, the weather, it's very cold. How can the planet be warming? It's so cold, record temperatures, confusing climate change and weather, which a lot of people do. How do you combat that?
Well, listen, Americans are getting to this. He can't hide the fact that Nebraska's underwater. He can't hide the fact from Americans that Paradise, California burned to the ground. He can't hide the fact that Houston had floods and Miami Beach has had to actually raise their Main Street about 1.5 feet because of rising sea levels. He can't do that, and that's why Americans of both parties actually are dramatically coming to see this as a problem. In Iowa, the primary voters and Democratic side now believe this is the top priority, tied with health care. And so he can't hide from these facts. And you know, when he said that wind turbines cause cancer, look, wind turbines don't cause cancer, they cause jobs. And that's what this is about, growing jobs in this country and making electric cars in Michigan and batteries in Nevada and wind turbines in Iowa. This is a job-creating engine, and people are now coming to grips with that. Now, the other thing about this message is this is as much about character as it is about science. Clearly, we know what the science is. That's indisputable. But I believe the American character is we are optimists, not pessimists. We are a can-do people, not a can't-do people. We are inventors. We create, we invent, we build. Donald Trump's view is very cramped. He doesn't think we can do big things. He doesn't think we're smart enough to create technologies to transform this to a clean energy economy. He's just simply wrong. He is short-selling the American people. I bring an optimistic view to this job.
So, Governor, I want to ask you some questions about some of the issues that many of your other opponents have sort of taken a stand on. Medicare for all, where do you stand on that? And if you are in favor of that or another sort of form of expanded medical coverage, how do we pay for it?
We need to make sure everyone has access to health care. We're doing some really great things in my state. Hopefully we'll embrace the first public option of any state in the United States. I'm working on that legislation right now. We've been one of the most successful states in implementing Obamacare with one of the biggest reductions of uninsurance. Our opioid crisis response is doing some good things. But on the federal level, I believe we have to move rapidly to expand access to Medicare, to lower the age for access, to allow people to buy into it, and allow those choices to move forward. I think that is a really solid step forward on the road to what we eventually need. Which is universal health care. And this will give us the biggest expansion since Obamacare. And it's the kind of thing, you know, that's the other thing I've noticed, that people have a lot of ideas and suggestions. Governors get things done. Governors are actually moving the needle. I've heard a lot of people talk about, you know, family paid leave. Well, I've done it. We got the best in the country. Minimum wage, we've got the highest in the country. Net neutrality, I'm the first governor to sign a net neutrality bill. We've got the best gender pay equity. We have a radical notion that women should get paid the same as men in our state. We've eliminated the death penalty, or will shortly. So the point is, I have confidence in our ability to move the healthcare needle forward, because we're doing that in my state right now.
But it's hard, as Anne-Marie asked, first of all, the question, of course, is how do you pay for that? A lot of Americans are worried about the costs that would come into focus with an expansion of healthcare coverage. And frankly, running a state is quite different than trying to get legislation through the Senate and through Congress, as you saw with the fact that Republicans for many years wanted to repeal Obamacare, weren't able to do that.
Well, I'm paying for it. Look, one of the ways to pay for it is reduce the cost of health care, and that's why we have to allow negotiation with the industry so that we can reduce the cost of health care. That's really been eating us alive. That's actually where we've had a lot of success in my state, where we've kept Medicaid inflation down lower than probably almost any other state. So I've had good experience on that. But here's a very important point you raise. If we are going to have any major progress in this country, we have to do what I'm saying we need to do, which is to get rid of the filibuster. The filibuster makes it impossible for this nation to move forward.
You've been pushing for that.
I'm the first candidate in this race, and so far there's only one other who has joined me, and I hope they'll all follow me in saying we need to get rid of the filibuster. We need to get rid of gerrymandering. We need to end the Electoral College and have a popular vote. And we have to make sure that everybody releases their tax returns. Not just the president, but all the Democrats as well.
I want to touch upon getting rid of the Electoral College. Why, in your view, is it problematic in this country?
It's an artifact of an earlier age when the 13 colonies had some concerns. But we now are a unified country. We ought to have one person, one vote. That's the purest form of democracy, and it's time to do that. This sort of making decisions based on artificial lines is just that time is for the antebellum past.
You're the president of the United States. How do you explain that to somebody in Wyoming or somebody in South Dakota?
It's really, really easy. You're an American, I'm an American, we both get one vote. And this cuts with, you know, small democratic states
But they'll say, look, I'm going to be overwhelmed by the number of people. You know, it's going to be a country that is going to be dictated by what Californians and New Yorkers and people in New Jersey want.
That's really just a silly argument, because when everybody has one vote, nobody's overwhelming anyone, okay? So a vote in Omaha and New York and Ephrata, Washington all count the same. And that's how we make progress in this country. So I'm a person who believes in reforming the system so we can make progress. I'm all about progress. I'm all about optimism. I'm about building a new economy for this country around clean energy where we can put people to work. All of these things are a way to get that job done.